Another edition of the College Football Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jordan Vanek. If you guys could like, subscribe to the channel, it'd be a huge help to both of us. I'm joined here with Matt Gajewski. He's fantastic college football projections, and I'm ready for a fun weekend. But before we get into it, if you don't know what PrizePicks is they offer daily props where you can take their over-unders. They offer the most college football props out of any site I've seen out there. You can pick anywhere from 2 to 5 players, and you can have a max of a 10x if you hit all of your picks. They have NFL, NBA, NHL, esports. They have pretty much everything you could offer. And if you go and download it in the Apple Store, use code Awesemo, and we'll match up to $100 of your first deposit. Right now, we got free NFL and MLB prop tools that can just get you started, so you can just follow the pros. But Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Had a really fun night last night with some Coastal Carolina bet Houston, so that was fantastic. Looking forward to tonight's games and then a full main slate on Saturday.
Yeah, your Isaiah Likely, I think, popped in your projections, and I mean that that performance was just absolutely ridiculous.
He didn't pop that much, but holy smokes, what a crazy game!
Yeah, if you do college football redraft and you played against Isaiah Likely, I am sorry. That was just that was ridiculous. I can't believe that his stat line is just one of those absurd things. So now when I pull his projections and different things, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, he scored 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns last night. I don't even remember.
4, I believe. I don't know. Ridiculous. I ended up falling asleep because the game got out of hand.
Yeah, let's get Coastal Carolina in the playoffs, though. Let's do it. Let's get Coastal, Cincinnati, Bama, Georgia. Run it, those 4 teams. I mean, I don't want to see Bama and Georgia go kill some of the other, boring teams in football. Let's give the small guys a chance. But getting into it, PrizePicks, this is another huge week, and there's been some lines that I think you could take huge advantage of, where I'm going to start it out with UCF quarterback Mikey Keane. He's a true freshman, and his over-under is 188 passing yards, and I really like the over in this one. ECU is giving up over 300 passing yards a game. They have been one of the worst pass defenses in the country. And this one for UCF is at home, where Mikey Keane last week on the road, it was kind of a tougher environment for a true freshman without Jalen Robinson. This will be his second start. I think he'll be much better through the air. And I'm not expecting him to go throw for 270, but I think 200 yards is very well in his range of outcomes. And against an ECU team that also plays up tempo, how are you feeling about that, Matt?
It's not a game I actually projected, so I'm going to have to lean on you for this one. It's not on the main slate for either contest, but all I really know about him is he's the backup quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, last week he attempted 26 passes. His ADOT was 9.1, which is pretty good for someone, coming into a first start. He didn't throw for a ton of yards against Navy, but that's just one of those games that isn't exactly the quarterback's favor. He's on the road, true freshman. This week, I think he's just going to have a bounce back and he's going to get the volume needed to go for over 188 yards. UCF is the favorite in that one, and I believe the over-under is 64 points. So it's a favorable game. It'll be up tempo, and for Keane, I think he just easily hits that prop.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Navy. They're a triple option team. They're going to depress opposing play volume. We know UCF wants to play fast. They're a fairly balanced team overall. So all that makes sense to me.
That's good. But getting into your next prop, I almost wrote this guy up in the article for the Saturday slate. I just didn't know if I would trust Baby Tua. So you need to sell me on Raheem Jarrett, because I don't know if I can trust Baby Tua and going forward.
Yeah, it's not a matter of trust. It's a volume thing. They lost Dante Demas, which is he's a player that has a 20% target share in the offense. And then you look at some of the numbers that he's been pulling. He easily leads their team in receiving yards with 507. If you just look at the total, the Vegas total, it's 71 points. It's a 21-point spread in favor of Ohio State, but that still puts Maryland at a 25-point implied team total. So they're expected to score 3 touchdowns plus in this game. Anytime they throw the ball, which should be plentiful, they already have a 58% pass rate, and they're going to be down in this game. So when they do throw, Jarrett is going to be the guy receiving a large workload. He already has a 20% target share himself. And again, that should rise without Demas.
Yeah. And I mean, I do agree, because I looked at his overall stats on the season, and he should be running more routes. The last week, it was weird that they were rotating a lot more than I just remembered.
They just got crushed.
Yeah.
Their starters were out of the game in the second half. Not the whole second half, obviously, but they just got slaughtered.
Yeah, I mean, that Iowa team is one of those ugly teams, and they're this weekend. I'm excited to see what they do against Penn State, but I'm not really excited for the game, because it just seems like one of those just ugly Big Ten, matchups where it could be 6-10 the final score, and then it could also have some crazy ugly defensive touchdowns that end up getting there. But Raheem Jarrett at 59, I mean, he's averaging 55 receiving yards in the year, and if Demas is out now completely, he should get the uptick in volume. I do think that I should have wrote about that in my article, but
okay. 3 of their games haven't been competitive this year, so he hasn't been needed in any of except 2 games. You look at the West Virginia and Illinois game, his routes are just fine in those.
Yeah, now I'm looking at the route run percentage, and I mean, overall, he's a super talented player too. I mean, he was a 5-star coming out of high school, right? Correct? Yeah. Okay. I mean, he's their best player. But moving forward to who I think you should be pairing with Mikey Keane is Brandon Johnson. Jalen Robinson is still in the air if he's going to play. He missed last week, and I'm not sure he's going to be coming back this week. But Brandon Johnson this year, he's been running a ton of routes. He's getting over 6 targets a game. And in the 1 week that we have with Mikey Keane, he saw 8 targets. He was his favorite go-to guy, and over 50, I think it's 61 yards receiving, 61 and a half yards receiving. I think he crushes that prop against one of the worst pass defenses in the country. ECU has given up over 100 receiving yards to a single player against every team they've played so far, except for the one Division II team that they played that I just don't have the stats on. I'm assuming they still did it, but I think Brandon Johnson will easily hit that 61 over. How are you feeling? I know you didn't project the game, but is my words convincing enough?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he was a full-time player in the offense, even without Jalen Robinson. And I know Robinson is a more targeted player when he's on the field, But I think that gives you confidence one way or another with Brandon Johnson. I mean, he was a strong transfer coming into the program too. So that's when I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, he was just his favorite target. When you watch that Navy game, like he was the best receiver that we had. Like O'Keefe kind of took a step back, which I didn't expect. They don't even have O'Keefe on PrizePicks, which I was kind of looking forward to because I figured his would come in pretty low, which would allow, an easy picking them both.
Buy low.
Yeah, that's what I was going towards. But now let's get into one of the big things we have offering over at Awesemo. For just $29.95, you can get Awesemo Plus, which includes all the sports for the week, or you could just stick to college football, which Matt again has been killing projections for just $14.95. And if you want to go see more of Matt, more of Ben, more of Dave, go to the Awesemo odds channel and fantasy channel. They provide great insight on a multitude of platforms and can help you win your weeks, win your bets, and just ultimately crush it for anything that you need done for the gambling aspect of things. But getting into your second pick, Matt, another team that I don't know what to think of Brendan Armstrong anymore, but I see that you're comfortable taking Billy Kemp over in his receiving prop.
Yeah. What do you mean you're not sure what we're comfortable with Brendan
Armstrong? When I watch him play, I just don't see a good quarterback. I see a ton of volume. I just don't like the way
that's the thing. I mean, he's been over 268 yards in every game this year. He's been over 330 in 4 of his 5. They throw the ball so much and they pass at such a high volume that it's just going to trickle down to his pass catchers. And even if you look at the PrizePicks over under for Armstrong, he's in the 340s, and that's just not reflected in the pass catchers. Billy Kemp is at 70.5 receiving yards right now. And if you look at their recent games, this should be a closer projection between Kemp and Dontavian Wicks, who's a very good receiver himself. But the difference is actually 17 yards on PrizePicks. Kemp in the last 4 games has a 9.5 target per game average. Dontavian Wicks is at 8. I know Wicks is the bigger play threat, but Kemp actually has a more consistent target share in the offense. And these are the top 2 receivers. We're expecting a lot of production from both. Louisville's defense certainly doesn't scare you. They're nearly allowing 300 passing yards per game. So I'm going to be firing up Billy Kemp.
Yeah, I mean, Kemp is also that dude who plays the slot, gets a lot of easy targets. They spread the field with him. I love Wicks, the way he plays. They disappeared with targeting him against the Miami team, which was kind of shocking to me at least. And the one touchdown he had was a just ridiculous catch last weekend. But Kemp is someone that's been consistent in the offense pretty much this year. 6 targets, 11, 10, 11 these past few weeks. I do like Billy Kemp in terms of where his PrizePicks is, and he just has to average like 6 yards a target, or 7 yards a target, which shouldn't be too hard for him.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And I mean, Louisville again it's been up and down. Their defense can't really defend teams. I think that the Ole Miss like style of play is not something that Virginia runs, but the pass heavy and just different concepts you'll see is going to be utilized. And I mean, the tight end that they had that missed last weekend, do you worry about any targets going to the backup quarterback, Thompson, I think his name is?
Yeah, he's going to be targeted either way. Like he had 9 targets last week, but that didn't matter for Kemp. Kemp still had 11.
Yeah, that's true.
They just throw the ball so like Brennan Armstrong's averaging 45 attempts per game.
Yeah. I mean, the volume will be there for sure. I just think that he's just one of those quarterbacks, man, that just like bug me when I watch him play. I don't know what it is. I think it's a lefty thing, and he just looks so uncomfortable doing it. Wasn't he a former safety?
No idea. I've only watched him play for a half this year. I have no idea if he looks good or not. Like I just do the projections, man. Like I don't watch these guys play.
I figured you're watching every single game with 20 screens. Division II doesn't matter. You're tuned in with every single stat.
I mean, might catch like 1 or 2 games a weekend.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I'm just saying I like Brandon Armstrong definitely gets all the volume there, but man, watching him play football is a little tough.
He was getting like some Heisman hype. He couldn't have been that bad.
Oh no, dude. I mean,
not since, because they've lost like a couple games, but like early in the year when they're still scoring a lot, but early in the year he was like a pretty decent like Heisman candidate. Like his odds weren't that long.
No. The volume, because like when you're putting up stats like that, you just get into the Heisman discussion. It's just their offense was like, huge. Like Wicks was getting open so much, and he was just putting the ball there and just making plays. Kemp was as well. I mean, they were running fluidly until they started playing the ACC, and I think Wake Forest was the first team that kind of shut them down from what they were doing. And then this past week against Miami was pretty good. But moving to the next pick that we have, it's actually one of my favorite picks. It's scary because of how his yards per carry look, but Abram Smith under 81.5 rushing yards. This backfield, they give the ball to so many different pieces that he's only averaging 13 carries a game. And this West Virginia defense is only giving up 3 yards a carry, or 2.3 yards a carry, I believe. And this game's going to be slower paced. I'm not sure that he will get the volume needed because they run the ball with their quarterback and he splits carries with Ebner. Abram Smith has been phenomenal on the little touches, but 81 just feels a little too high for his rushing yards. How do you feel about that one?
It was actually one, I'm glad you brought it up. It was like one that just got left off for me. I agree with you. The timeshare is concerning. And like you mentioned, West Virginia, if you just look at their yardage per game allowed on the ground, it doesn't look fantastic. But then on a per attempt basis, it's 2.8, which is one of the better marks in the entire country. And Abram has been more efficient than his counterpart, Tristan Ebner. But for whatever reason, they have not given him more work. So I think you can look at this with confidence towards the other, because even though he has been like, he nearly has 200 more rushing yards on almost identical carries to Ebner, but they just will not give him more work. So I agree with you on this one. It's one I think where we're trying to short Baylor in one of the tougher games, especially tougher run defenses they faced all year.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at he has 0 games this year where he's gotten over 20 touches. It's just
they just won't give it to him, man. I don't know why.
It's just super efficient, and it's like one of those things that I have him in my college football redraft, and it's been fun when they've been playing D2 schools because on 10 touches he can get 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. But now that they're starting to play in conference games, when I thought to myself, I'm like, yay, we get to go play the Big 12. It's like he's just getting 9 carries. He's one of those dudes that just don't get the ball enough. It's like Sir Roderick Thompson last weekend, where I don't understand why they didn't give him more than, I think, 13 carries with the backup Columbine or whatever. I mean, I think they ended up winning the game, but it's just like one of those, why don't you just give this guy more touches?
Yeah, there are some coaches that just do this. I mean, Lincoln Riley's done it to a degree this year. But hey, if we can capitalize on it with the under here, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, I mean, under 81 is a good number. He's got to be averaging over 8 yards a carry to hit it, in my opinion. 6-7 yards a carry. Did my math wrong there. But going next to another rushing pick, Tyler Batty over 79.5 rushing yards. The spread in this North Texas game isn't high enough where I think he's going to just come out and not get the carries needed. I think he'll get enough volume to hit this over. My concern is he does a lot of receiving work as well. I'm hoping he just does it on the ground. North Texas this year has been giving up 4.5 yards a carry. Not that it needs to be really noted, but Tyler Batty is one of the better running backs in the country. And I think he's just on 15 carries. He should be able to get over 80 rushing yards against this defense.
Yeah, they will feed him even in negative game script, as we saw last week, because I was on the over and I was 21 carries at the end of the day. I'm like, all right, probably hit this, but just kidding. They allowed 41 rushing yards to Batty, so that wasn't good. But the volume's positive. He's seen over 18 carries 3 times this year. One of the times he did not was against Southeast Missouri State. So you're like, their starters were just out of the game. He is a fantastic workload. I think it's a nice buy low spot.
Yeah, I mean, against that Tennessee defense, that game was just out of hand so quick. But to see 21 carries on that game was just ridiculous. I remember one of the better picks I had of the week was Tion Evans over, I think it was 64 rushing yards. And the man had he had 8 carries for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns.
That was good by you. Jabari getting hurt was nice for that.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, Missouri's run defense is just awful. I wish North Texas's running back was on the slate because I probably would have picked his over in rushing, even though he plays for North Texas. It's just this Missouri run defense. Each week, I will, once they start playing more SEC opponents, unless, they're giving 120 yards to the running back, I'm going to try to find my way to play him in PrizePicks.
Yeah, it was a good call by you. I had some pretty rough ones. Just on Tennessee, I had under on Velus Jones. He hadn't had more than 40% of the snaps in any game, jumps up to 82%. Like, okay. Ches Malusi's getting a Jonathan Taylor workload, hit the over there. They gave Jalen Berger more carries, and Ches Malusi has 6. Like, that wasn't going to work. And then the last one was Batty. So he's a pretty rough week for me.
Oh yeah, no, my prize picks, it's same rough week. I mean, Casey Thompson killed me.
Oh
It
yeah,
happens.
they just decide they're going to run the ball 35 times with Bijan.
But TCU played too deep the whole game, and
Oh,
I'm
it was
just thinking,
yeah.
like, what do you do? Like, you had your goal should just stop Bijan. Like, if you stop Bijan, you're probably stopping Texas. But instead, they went with let's make sure Casey doesn't have any throwing lanes, and we'll tackle Bijan down the field with our safety. We'll be able to do it. I mean, I was watching that game and just frustration of just like, Gary Patterson's a good defensive coach. Like, what are you doing? what could you possibly be doing trying to not take away the number one player? It's like Alabama loading the box against Ole Miss and just relying on their corners to stop that secondary or passing attack. Like, that's not going to work. You play too deep. It's Ole Miss. You don't want to give up the big play passing. Let them try to run on you.
Yeah,
But
credit to Sark.
yeah, just credit to the offensive coordinator that he got a little lucky. But this weekend, I'm excited for that Red River rivalry. But moving on to your next pick, this is a guy I didn't expect to see on the sheet, but hey, his name's here, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say about Dustin Crumb, Kansas State quarterback.
Yeah, so we're going Buffalo versus Kent State here. Dustin Crumb has played one of the harder slate of games in non-conference play that a MAC quarterback can face. They played Texas A&M, they played Iowa, and they played Maryland. So his passing average is coming in at 176 yards per game, which leads to a depressed prop on PrizePicks. You can currently get this one at 195 yards, 194 and a half yards. So he just needs 195 to eclipse it. Crumb has been over this consistently throughout his career. If you go back multiple seasons, last year, 4 games in an abbreviated season, was over that in every single one. And he was over 270 passing yards in 3 of the 4. You go back another season prior, this is a pass heavy offense, and it's going to be more up tempo than what we've seen because of the level of competition. It's a nice buy low spot on Kent State, who is one of the fastest offenses in the country, going up against a Buffalo defense, which hasn't been good against the run or the pass for that matter. So love buying low on Dustin Crumb. This is probably 30, 40 yards too low.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at like just his stats on the year against tougher competition. And the big thing that jumps out to me is he's been sacked on 9.8% of dropbacks and sacked 3 times a game. Like, that offensive line has just been getting abused, so there's not really much room to throw the ball. But if he starts playing, the MAC competition, he won't be sacked as much. And his ADOT is 10.5, which is good for a quarterback. And he's dropping back to pass 33 times a game. So it's not like they're just in a run first offense. I remember you got me hooked onto Maction, and watching Dustin Crumb play was fun because, to be honest with you, it's not that he's anywhere near this talent. It's like the way that he plays football is the way that Josh Allen plays, where he's just big, goofy, and he will throw the ball 40 yards down the field on just a flick. It's a fun time to go. And I mean, this year against tougher competition, he's at 180 yards. So against Buffalo, he should be able to cruise by 200 yards, no problem.
He projects for 255 on my end.
that's the type of props we need to take advantage to. And I mean, this is the whole point. Like, once I see your projections that come out for Saturday and 9 a.m., I get ahead and try to bet as many props as I possibly can, to be honest.
I love that. Thanks, man.
It's some of those discrepancies. But speaking of, the Red River rivalry, Casey Thompson, you like his over of 210 receiving or passing yards. Are you worried about his volume, or do you think that Oklahoma is actually going to use the game plan of stopping Bijan Robinson?
I don't know if they'll have a choice. If they're down in the game, they'll have to throw Casey. And I think Alex Grinch is a much smarter defensive coordinator than the effort that TCU gave, which you laid it out already. Wasn't pretty. But I honestly like the overs in both sides of this game. I'm not sure why they're so low. I mean, Spencer Rattler's priced at basically his floor, which is another one that I really like on the other side. He's just at 259. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yep, 259 for Spencer Rattler. I mean, he easily projects north of that. He's just averaging 251 per game. But we've seen a ceiling from Rattler for an extended sample coming last year. This game is a 63.5 over-under, which I think bodes well for passing attacks on both sides. And then as far as Texas goes, they were given the run game last week. I'm not sure they will be this week against Oklahoma. Their strength is their front. They're not even allowing 100 rushing yards per game, but their secondary is very banged up. They've been without Woody Washington. They're allowing 271 yards per game. Texas will be the best offense Oklahoma's faced this year so far. Casey Thompson, again, his stats are depressed based on, splitting time with Hudson Card to start the year. Last week, they just flat out didn't need him as they ran to victory with Bijan, but I don't think you see 35 attempts from Bijan on the ground again here. Both of these quarterbacks are too low.
Yeah, I mean, the Red River rivalry usually gets pretty crazy because I think last year they went to like 3 to 4 overtimes, but I agree that Oklahoma's defense through the air, you can beat them, and Casey Thompson should be able to do it. He's been pretty efficient this year in terms of like his yards per attempt is 9.3. He just literally hasn't attempted too many passes. And in this one, he should be getting more volume, which is huge. But one of the questions in the chat is, what do you think about Sam Howell? Sam Howell is one of the guys that I wrote up for over 304 passing yards because I think this Florida State defense is just like, I think Sam Howell has been on a streak throwing the ball for over 300 yards. Last year, he threw for 340. You have Ty Chandler for over 80 rushing yards. Do you think North Carolina is just going to be able to put up all the yards, or do you think that the Sam Howell bet for the over is reaching?
Let me see what I have Sam Howell projected for. It's pretty decent, I think. He comes in, let's see here. 280 for me. So I think it's just going to be play volume kind of thing for Sam Howell. But overall, it's not bad.
I mean, for me, I just looked at Sam Howell. He's been throwing for over 300 yards each week for the last 4 weeks, basically every week besides week 1. And against Florida State last year, he threw for over 340, and they lost against Florida State, which was one of their sort of most shocking losses of the season last year. I think they're going to try to go and put up 40, 50 points. So I was wondering if you would like both Ty Chandler and Sam Howell, but seems like you're a little down on Howell. But tell me about Ty Chandler and why you're liking his over in rushing.
Yeah, Ty Chandler, you mentioned just Florida State's defense. It's certainly not good on the ground either. And Ty Chandler, the games they've played haven't been really competitive recently, which I'm not sure that it will be here. They're 17.5-point favorites, but they've taken their foot off the gas recently with him. Only 12 carries against Duke was a little bit surprising, but that game was out of hand very fast. So Ty Chandler didn't really have a chance to reach his ceiling. He did have 17 and 20 carries in the 2 prior weeks. So if Florida State can keep this reasonably close, I think Ty Chandler's workload will get back to those numbers. And he's been fairly efficient this year, nothing spectacular. But if the volume's there and Florida State can keep it close enough, I like Howell too. I think one of those guys eclipses this number. They have a 41-point implied team total, so they're expected to move the ball. Just not sure which way it's going to be.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, Ty Chandler's been one of those guys that they've been able, like when he gets the carries, he looks fantastic. They just don't usually utilize him too much, and that's one of the things that have bothered me. I remember in week 1, he was like the chalk for the single game slate between, I think, North Carolina and Virginia Tech. And I went away and I was like, you know what? I'm going to fade him because North Carolina is just not going to get him the ball, and played Josh Downs at the captain spot. And Josh Downs hit for over 100 yards and was fantastic in that one. I'm excited to see that North Carolina offense because they've, been one of those teams that's now on a winning streak, and they've been putting it together. Sam Howell's been making kind of strides as a passer and a runner. Moving forward, another part of that Louisville game that you like is the Marshawn Ford over 47.5 receiving yards. Feels like we talk about Marshawn Ford every week because he is the number 1 receiver for Louisville, and they just refuse to make his prop over 50 yards. What do you have him coming in at?
They just lost Braden Smith too, which I'm surprised it's not higher. And he was out last week too, and it didn't make a huge difference, but still, you have him as basically the only clear wide receiver with a target share on this team, at least a notable one. So I think just naturally the over is going to look good with him. It's tough because they're a run-heavy team. They're going to use Cunningham on the ground quite a bit here. But if you're just looking at bets in the pass game, I think he's the best one to target.
And I believe Taylor Morin for Wake Forest was able to hit over 80 or 100 receiving yards against this Virginia defense. I think they can slip up and be too focused on Malik Cunningham, which allow Marshawn Ford to run free. But
yeah, it's like the total is so high that teams are going to score and they're not priced in. And you asked the projection, he projects for 55 yards for me. So a pretty reasonable difference, but nothing like the Crumb difference.
The crumb difference is definitely a big one. You know your action better than anybody else I know personally.
It's my favorite conference, man.
I remember the first week of action, my brother bet on, I think it was Buffalo or Western Michigan, and that crazy, they were down by 17 points and ended up winning by 4 in 3 minutes. I think it was one of the most crazy bets that he hit, where he was dead in the water and then text me, there's no way I'm not betting this again next week. Let me know when Matt's doing his show again. And I'm like, I'll let you know. It's a scary time for action, but it's definitely a good one. But that's all we have for you guys today. If you please could subscribe, like to the show. And if you aren't on PrizePicks, use promo code Awesemo. Will match up to $100 of your first deposit. You can pick anywhere up to from 2 players to 5 players. Bet it. Your power play will be, if you get it all right, where a flex play, you can make some money back if you miss out on 1 or 2 picks. It's one of the best sites out there, and you can play it through cross sports. You can bet on the NFL and college football, and we have our prop tools for MLB and NFL free to use, where, just take the money that's given to you. We have great tools and great site over here at Awesemo. Appreciate you guys, and catch us later for the college football live before lock at 6 p.m. Eastern, where we'll actually be diving into a slate and not just PrizePicks, which will be nice and a nice change of pace. I'll be replacing Ben for the week, but appreciate you guys. Have a good one.